Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International here, as we'll be seeing the upper finals between Method EU and Abrakeydabra here. Joining us for all the action, we've got Sours, Nagura, Tettles, and I'm Jack. And right now, between this game, we'll be seeing how strong Abrakeydabra will be against the #1 seed and 2-time defending champion in Method EU. Freehold's going to be the first map. Time trial dungeon here, Sours, but it also has some limitations to it with that necrotic they have to deal with.
Yeah, so what's nice also about starting Freehold is that means that tanks can be Dark Iron Dwarf or Night Elf, depends on how they want to set up for the following matches, so there is some thought that goes into that. And then how big they can pull really comes down to coordination and practice, right? We saw some improvements in coordination and practice for various teams going into Freehold, and with Abrakeydabra and Method EU being the fastest two teams in time trials, a difference of 20 seconds in a dungeon like this is probably something that can be boiled down to, I want to say, almost RNG. Like, you can definitely make up 20 seconds just by playing a little bit faster, moving a little bit cleaner, doing a little bit more damage, getting more 5 rolls. It's something that's not outside of the realm of possibility that Abrakeydabra could beat Method EU here, which would be really exciting to see.
It'd be pretty exciting to see, without a doubt, but I'm also kind of questioning which side of Abra we're going to be able to go after. Because when they're at their best, they definitely stand toe-to-toe with Method NA, as they drop them down into lower bracket earlier here. But where they line up against Method EU, I think has always been kind of a struggle for them here on this one, Tettles.
Yeah, for sure. And then in addition to something like that is whenever we do see the Abrakeydabra that we want to see, it's the Jekyll and Hyde that Sloot always ends up talking about. Are we going to see the good Abrakeydabra today, or are we going to see the Abrakeydabra that ends up coming in 4th place like we did end up seeing last West Cup? So definitely seeing them look to improve here is very important, especially today in this matchup versus the Titan of Method EU.
Yeah, but we watch them very closely here, as favor, without a doubt, goes to Method EU at 76%, as diving into Game 1 on Freehold.
Yeah, so Freehold is actually one of those time trial matches, and we've seen Method EU get the #1 seed in the time trial, but Abra got the #2 spot, so they're actually not that far behind at all when it comes to the time trials.
Yeah, something also is very important to note is like the compositions that everybody's ending up running. You end up running Death Knight in Freehold a lot, and then you actually do see Divine Field here and now both ending up playing Night Elf. So a lot of the time you're going to end up wanting to play Dwarf or Dark Iron Dwarf just for that necrotic reset, because necrotic ends up being very scary for your tank. But since they do end up wanting that Death Knight for this dungeon, they're going to have a limited number of swaps coming into the next series, and it comes down to if they want to end up keeping their tank without a skip in like a crazy dungeon, or if they end up wanting to have that Death Knight. And you actually do see both tanks getting incredibly low here, as Divine Field is dipping to below 20% health.
Divine has so many necrotics, like he's just struggling to get rid of them, but now they finally dropped off. So now Aqu'sirr can heal him back up. But yeah, as you said, because the next map is actually Shrine that they're playing, and you 100% just want to have that Night Elf in Shrine because there's just so many skips that you want to do in this dungeon. So both of the teams choosing to not have Dwarves as their tank, not having this racial available to them to get rid of the necrotic. But we've seen teams before, we've seen Limit play really well without having the Dwarf, just doing those huge pulls anyway, and just dealing with it otherwise without the reach, just having the DK taunt, having the Windwalker taunt, and help out by resetting, or help out by crowd controlling so the tank can reset.
Yep, even though Divine got incredibly low, they ended up dealing with that trash pack just a little bit quicker than the side of Method EU, popping their Bloodlust and getting their first reaping in a Skycap and Crag, as we are seeing both teams neck and neck here. Mirrors actually ends up going down on the side of Method EU though.
Yeah, Mirror's actually going down. They do have a battle rest available to them, so they got him back up. But the problem is they actually popped the Bloodlust before Mirrors died. So he lost the whole Bloodlust duration. He probably lost cooldowns too. As you can see in the damage meter, Mirrors is nowhere to be seen really, just because he just lost all this damage here. So they're probably going to be a little bit slower here on the boss compared to Abrakeydabra. They didn't lose anyone. They have all their damage down, and you can see it in the HP difference on the boss.
Yeah, he's actually doing Moonkin damage to the boss right there. Unfortunately getting beat by the healer. Losing all of your cooldowns and Bloodlust is definitely not something you should be looking to do. Skycap and Crag being neck and neck for both teams here. Abrakeydabra getting it close to 50%, while Method EU has just broken that 60% mark.
Yeah, so Method EU definitely, well, struggling a little bit here. It's just very unfortunate timing for their death, really. Just having Mirrors die on this exact moment, losing all the cooldowns, you can see it's just incredibly hard for him to catch up on the damage here compared to even now. Now, of course, a lot of the damage is on the Reaping Souls, which, you know, is not that important compared to boss damage, but still, just him struggling to catch up on the damage, while Abrakeydabra having a clean boss run here. Now, the one thing to mention here on this specifically is that you can actually have the green pools always spawn on the healer if you move the boss properly. As we can see, Abrakeydabra actually moving the boss around a little bit here. Now, because the green pools will always spawn where the bird is, so it will spawn the pools that it will do the dive through, as we can see happening up on Abracadabra's side now, and then it will always cast a pool on kind of the closest target to the bird. So what you want to do is you want to have the range, the healer always be closest, so the green pools don't spawn in melee, but both teams struggling a little bit, as we see Mythic EU also having one of those pools in melee.
Yeah, but it looks like Mythic EU is actually catching back up in damage somehow. It looks like they're going to, while they did end up pulling both of these bosses very evenly, obviously Mirror's ending up losing all of his cooldowns was actually super bad for his damage, but they ending up catching, and it looks like they're going to end up killing this boss relatively the same time, so nothing was really lost except for that battle res, which could be detrimental moving forward into the instance here.
Yeah, very interesting to see how they even caught up in damage here at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the other two DPS just did much more damage, if they just kind of made up for the lost damage of Mirrors, or maybe Mirrors, Mirrors, Windwalkers usually don't have a long cooldown on their offensive, so maybe that's why he just got them back up and managed to do some more single target. As we saw, Ellie actually dropped in so low, he almost went down there. He probably got hit by a bird at this point because he should be outranging the shot. I think it's only 30 yards or something like that, so he should be definitely outranging the shot. I think it was a pool plus a bird hitting him there, but he just barely survived as they downed the boss pretty much simultaneously. Both of the teams on the bridge now, on their way to the next trash pool.
Yep, this is definitely neck and neck. We actually did see Zilly end up popping his wild charge, stealthing, and getting over that enforcer there, as you do see the rest of his group making their way across that bridge here. Abrakeydabra positioning themselves in order to get that beer debuff. Basically, they end up getting it. It ends up getting rid of one of the Council of Captains bosses, so that whenever you do end up pulling it, you don't have to engage all three, which would actually probably wipe the whole entire group, as it does end up giving a damage buff. So doing that BRP event from both teams, as you do see on the side of Mythic EU and Abrakeydabra, they are doing a massive pull here.
Yeah, both of the teams doing very similar, massive pull here. You see the marks coming out on all the casters here, making sure all of the scary casts are getting interrupted, because those are some scary mobs, even if it's not on fortified. But you can see once the mobs are low, once the necrotic stacks high on the tanks, you can see the CC coming out, you can see the Ring of Peace coming out, the Vortex from the rest of it as well, just to make sure they deal with this properly. As you actually see Aqu'sirr not being here on Abracadabra's side, that's because he went over to the Ring of Booty to actually start the RP.
Yep, so as soon as Divine was in like a decent spot, he probably ended up shadow melding off combat, ends up stealthing, starting that RP event on the Ring of Booty, as Abrakeydabra making the most out of their time and instantly pulling the Council of Captains here. Of course, they have not procced their reaping yet, as they will get it as soon as that scrapper ends up dying there, and then they will end up having reaping on top of the Council of Captains, while Mythic EU has also engaged the Council fight.
Yeah, one thing to note here is that Mythic EU, of course, had the fastest time in the time trials, and Mythic EU already showed their strategy yesterday on the tournament. So Abrakeydabra had way more than enough time to adjust their strategy to even copy some of the things that Mythic EU was doing, because obviously Mythic EU did something better than Abrakeydabra in the time trial. So maybe they adjusted their strategy, and this is why we are seeing both of those teams just kind of doing the exact same thing. And now it's just going to be whoever does the strategy better. And for now, they're both neck and neck, but Mythic EU has 1 death, while Abrakeydabra has 0.
This is actually kind of scary for Divine Field. So he ends up getting his necrotic stacked up. Okay, he actually doesn't end up getting a reset right as that reaping comes in. So both of the bosses and that scrapper ended up stacking necrotic up high on him, but he does get a reset right before that reaping ends up coming in for Mythic, and then for Mythic EU as well. Both of these teams are neck and neck here. Abrakeydabra being a little bit more efficient in their damage, getting Jolly and Rawl relatively similar HP, while Mythic EU is kind of killing Jolly just a little bit quicker.
Yeah, so one thing to note here in this boss, of course, is there's no Eudora. Eudora makes this fight a lot more difficult. This combination of Rawl and Jolly is not that hard. The main reason why we don't see teams that pull a lot of trash on top of this is because of necrotic mainly, especially because they can't be dwarves. So if you have 2 bosses already stacking necrotic on a tank, you don't want additional mobs on top of it. It's just way too difficult for them to handle. So this is why we don't see extra mobs. But other than that, this event is not very hard for those teams to deal with, except the necrotic on the tank.
Yep, and you do actually see both teams kind of neck and neck, as the fight does not end until the last boss ends up dying. So kind of crushing Jolly, then single target down and Rawl is effectively the same thing as Abrakeydabra, ending up killing them both at the exact same time. And then we're going to see both teams here killing them within a couple seconds of one another as they make their way through the rest of the instance here.
Yeah, they're really dying within a couple of seconds. They're so close, those two teams. I feel like they died at the very same time for both of the teams.
Yeah.
So close between those two. as we see the Shroud coming out from both of the teams to go into those Ring of Booty event. Now, they need to click on the pig here to be sure to spawn Ludwig, and while the RP is happening, while Ludwig is spawning, you're probably going to pull some trash on the right side. Now, this trash is pretty difficult, especially with Necrotic, because you have a bunch of mobs that need to be interrupted. You have a harpooners that kind of hook you back in, so definitely you gotta watch out for this trash.
Yeah, you actually do see Mythic EU now ending up popping his life potion and doing a pretty big pull, while on the side of Abrakeydabra, they're kind of waiting around just for a couple seconds, and then they get their pull started. So just a little bit more time efficient on the side of Mythic EU. You actually do see that Ursul's Vortex come down as now starts to run out of melee range. He gets the Ring of Peace in order to be able to get that Necrotic reset.
Yeah, you see now just standing in the Ring of Peace, definitely just so much nice to see coming out of these teams, just so much coordination just to be sure to reset the Necrotic, just having Ring of Peace, having Vortex, having any sort of AoE CC to be able to help the tank out. And if there's one mob that is not getting to see, then definitely going to see a taunt coming out of either the Druid, the DK, or the Monk. They actually have 3 taunts available to them outside of the tank taunt, of course. And now Mythic EU already on Ludwig here, as they already got him decently low, on top of having some trash.
Yeah, so the pulls were actually not mirrored on the side of Abrakeydabra and Mythic EU. Actually now gets super low on the side of Mythic EU as he sits at like 25 stacks in Necrotic here. He gets Harpoon back in, and it gets refreshed at the last second. Zalia ends up going down, and now is going to probably end up falling here in just a couple seconds.
Yeah, so the problem was Zalia actually taunted Ludwig, I believe, because now didn't manage to reset his stacks. So now was leaping away. Zalia taunted, but Zalia was too close, and he died to aggro, I believe. And then now was the one who was furthest away, now got hooked in. And this might just be a full team wipe coming in here by Mythic EU, as they don't have any battle res available to them. Now they can't release because Ludwig puts you in boss combat, so meaning he can't release Spirit. Now it's only Maris and Gingy alive, and there's no way they can deal with Ludwig plus the Reaping Wave, so there's actually a full wipe coming in here. They have to reset, they have to deal with all those Reaping Souls again that respawn, and they have to do Ludwig again. This is a disaster for Mythic EU.
Yeah, but Abrakeydabra wasn't having smooth sailing either. Swagfist ended up going down, but they did end up having a battle res available for him. Both of these teams ending up having a little bit different of a pull here. Mythic EU electing to pull trash on top of Ludwig, while Abrakeydabra just did a little bit bigger of a pull, only pulling that Reaping on top of Ludwig, and that's where now in Divine Field ended up being a little bit different in terms of how much Necrotic stacks and how much danger they were in. Divine Field was only in danger during the massive trash pull that we actually did see come out from the side of Abrakeydabra, while now was actually in such a big dangerous spot on Ludwig just because of how many Necrotic stacks he got from that trash.
Yeah, they probably just underestimated the fact that they don't have the Dwarf available to them, right? So pulling trash on top of Ludwig, just having so many Necrotic stacks and not being able to release as you are in boss combat, and then just not having the Dwarf ratio to refresh, to reset your stacks, having Zalia taunt, not working out properly, and then everything just falling apart just because they don't have this Dwarf ratio. But Abrakeydabra on the other hand, finishing off this pull here, as you can see, the fixates coming out onto the people. Now the fixate can actually be soothed by the Druid, or it can be stunned as well, so there's lots of things you can do, and that's what we see the teams do here.
Yep, Abrakeydabra pulling Trothak finally and DPSing him down. They're going to have their Bloodlust available up in 25 seconds, but we do expect them to probably save it for Harlan Sweet here, as they do pull some of these neutral mobs on top of Trothak in order to be able to get just a little bit more damage for a shine, because Unholy Death Knight ends up getting a lot of single target damage just from being able to get Festermite stacks, and their AoE to single target damage conversion is actually very high. So on the side of Mythic EU, they're doing a very similar pull from what we did see out of the side of Abrakeydabra here. Just a massive pull of trash, making sure now ends up kiting those Necrotic stacks is actually very important though.
Yeah, Divine Field, they're also getting the 80% Reaping Wave on top of Trothak here now. Divine Field making sure he gets the aggro from all the Reaping mobs as they pour in, because usually when a Reaping spawns, the healer will have aggro because of the healing aggro, of course. So Divine Field just jumping around, leaping around, making sure he gathers all those Reaping Souls before they get to Aqu'sirr, as he's kiting the Sharks on the side here. But they seem to be cleaning up most of the Reaping Souls here. The only one that is left is Ludwig's Soul, of course, as Ludwig's Soul has so much more HP than all the other ones just because of the initial HP of Ludwig.
So I think maybe it was either a Ring of Peace or just something ended up happening, maybe now ended up going down, but on the side of Mythic EU, their pull ended up being super messy, and you actually did see some people getting harpooned down to this lower area. I didn't actually see what ended up happening, but now they're trying to just recover from that pull. They do proc their 4th Reaping of the instance, and they have 9 deaths here currently.
Yeah, so Abrakeydabra definitely in the driver's seat here, as they're the ones who are in throwback. Mythic EU didn't even pull the boss yet. They did proc the Reaping Wave, but they're just now about to pull the boss. And not only that, but they also have 8 more deaths. So, of course, a 40-second difference between those two teams. It's definitely Abracadabra's game here. And the interesting thing is, after this dungeon, if Abrakeydabra actually wins here, then we're going to see Shrine. And Shrine is the one dungeon where Abra won the time trials against Mythic EU. So Abra actually having a very good chance of being the first team to beat Mythic EU here. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but Abrakeydabra definitely ahead here. So let's see if they can finish off this dungeon, because all they have to do is finish. Because if they don't have any wives, they're definitely ahead.
Yeah, the end of this instance, though, is actually kind of scary with how you end up dealing with Harlan Sweet and those Cannonball Barrages. So it can actually get kind of scary, especially since Divine and now both are not Dwarf or Dark Hardened Dwarf, so they are not able to actually get resets on their necrotic stacks, as we've talked about a lot. So maybe making sure that your healer ends up taunting off Harlan Sweet, or just allowing your tank just to get a reset on the necrotic is very important, because you're going to be looking to pull a decent amount of trash into Harlan Sweet just by virtue of how those Cannonball Barrage casts end up DPSing down the trash next to the Harlan Sweet.
Yeah, we saw Limit do it earlier without having this Dwarf available to them, and also Method and A, of course. Now, they did change up their pools a little bit, and Limit just kind of charged in, used their Bloodlust, pulled everything on top, and then instead of having the Dwarf ratio, they just kind of had other people taunt the mobs away from him just to be sure that they did get the reset off of the Necrotic. So that's something that Abrakeydabra also wants to be doing, as they both have the 80%. And just what we usually see teams in Freehold here. They get the 80%, and then they go to the last boss, and they do the rest of the trash in this last boss area.
Yep, and Trothak will be going down here shortly for Abrakeydabra. They do have Bloodlust and 1 Battle Res available, whereas on the side of Method EU, they are only at 40% on Trothak with 0 Battle Reses available, but they do have Bloodlust for Harlan Sweet later on in the instance. Aqu'sirr getting topped up on mana, stealthing through as they do make their way down to this bridge here.
Yeah, so on this bridge, they're most likely going to skip the trash here at the start, just go straight to the boss, and then pull a bunch of trash on top of the boss. This is just so very efficient, not only because the boss kind of kills the mobs for you with this cannon barrage, but also because, of course, whenever you're hitting a single target, high HP target, if you can kill other mobs while killing the high HP target, it's just so efficient. As we see, the boss being pulled and the Bloodlust being used.
Yeah, this is actually definitely interesting. We're not Abrakeydabra is not waiting to get to 66% on or 60% on Harlan Sweet for everybody to get this Cannonball Barrage. Instead, they are pulling it straight into that trash pack, getting Divine Field high on necrotic stacks, just making sure that Divine ends up popping an ample amount of defensives to where he doesn't end up getting low whenever he does end up getting high on necrotic stacks. The Cannonball Barrage does come through. It looks like they ended up using their Ursul's Vortex in order to be able to get the Enforcers off Divine. The Ring of Peace comes through. You actually do see Aqu'sirr taunting Harlan Sweet off Divine, and Divine gets a necrotic reset, which is super good on the side of Abrakeydabra. Method EU here downing Trothak in just a couple more seconds, though.
Yeah, very well done by Abrakeydabra here. Divine Field did get knocked by one of those. Divine Field did get knocked into one of those bombardments in the very last seconds by one of the Enforcers, but they got the Enforcers down at this point, so it's only the boss left, and of course the 11% trash that they have to do later. But this 11% trash is not very difficult for them at all, because they're mostly going to be killing it with the painful motivation from the Ravagers. Now, Aqu'sirr and Sally are not playing Mastered, so they can't do the strategy that I've been talking about earlier that Limit and Method and A were playing, but they can still just see them and get the painful motivation off. So the last percent of trash definitely not going to be a super big deal for these teams.
Yep, and you're going to see Harlan Sweet hitting 60% here, and he's going to cast his Man of War ability, and then he's going to be putting the Cannonball Barrage on all the players as well. As you do see it right there, he gets the debuff, and then the Cannonball Barrage, whenever it's on all the players, it makes it really easy for you to be able to take out all the trash very quickly, just because that Cannonball Barrage does end up DPSing the targets down. You actually do see a Shine here doing 62k DPS. He has a super efficient single target, especially whenever you do end up pulling all of that trash at the very beginning of the instance with Bloodlust on top of Harlan Sweet. So that's the reason we ended up seeing them pull that super scary pull at the very beginning. You actually do see something mirrored on the side of Method EU, though.
Yeah, Method EU is doing this the same pull at the very start. Now just made sure to reset his necrotic stack, so they also should be safe in this pull. But at this point, they're just too far behind. It's a 30% boss difference, and especially on Harlan Sweet, the start of the percentage means so much more than the end, because at the start, you don't have a damage increase on the boss. As soon as you reach 60% and then 30%, you get damage increases on the boss, and the boss is just going to die much faster as soon as he's lower HP, as they're about to hit the 30% on Abracadabra's side. And as soon as it's 30, the boss is just going to melt health as he has a 100% damage increase on him.
Yep, and you do actually see Abrakeydabra positioning themselves in order to be able to get the last couple of percent that do end up needing from those painful motivation mobs and the officers and all that other trash that is kind of around this Harlan Sweet area. Whereas on the side of Mythic EU, they're still at 63% here on Harlan Sweet, and it's looking very bad for them. How they ended up dealing with the Ludwig von Tortolen pull just ended up being their demise here.
Yeah, most definitely. Even if Mythic EU somehow manages to kill this boss faster, which is just not going to happen, they still just have the 9 death difference. So a huge deal for Abrakeydabra here. All they have to do is finish off this trash. Now this can still be difficult, but they're timing it perfectly. You can see the cannon barrage come in. You can see the mobs die. You can see them getting the 100% here soon. You also have a Ravager with the painful motivation, so they should be able to finish off the trash that they need here. And Harlan Sweet is going to die any second now.
Yep, just a couple more mobs here for Abrakeydabra as they are sitting at 96%. We actually do see the officer and the oarsman sitting here. Divine Field making sure that he's still sitting alone. Necrotic Stacks, he gets a reset there, and then the last Cannonball Barrage will come through as Abrakeydabra does take game number 1.
With an incredible time, too. Abrakeydabra here with a sub-18-minute freehold winning against Mythic EU. This is also the first time that Mythic EU's lost to a non-Mythic team as well. They only lost 2 games to Mythic NA and 2-1, 2-1 last week. And this time, first time that Abrakeydabra has won against them, Sours. It seems like they're becoming human now.
Yeah, we've talked about Abra a lot in the past, and so they've got a fairly all-star lineup. They've got a lot of the best players from MDI last year, all kind of jumbled together. It's the all-star team, and this is sort of the performance that we've been expecting from Abra the entire tournament that they really haven't been able to pull off until just now. This dungeon was so close all the way through the second boss, dying just seconds apart for both teams, but a huge setback for Mythic EU on Ludwig von Tortolen with a slight difference in pool where Abrakeydabra decided to do a huge trash pull, and then instead, Mythic EU decided to do one of the trash packs with Ludwig, which ended up working out not very well for them at all.
Yeah, I think it just ended up being the difference with that dwarf racial. Obviously, you have to kind of premeditate as we are going into Shrine of the Storm in the next match, so you need to either pick that Death Knight or pick Night Elf on your tank. So not having that dwarf racial available for now ended up getting him high on Necrotic Stacks with Ludwig, and that ultimately was probably the reason he ended up going down there.
Yeah, and as we're talking about Ludwig, let's take a look at that clip here, Sours, going into that pull.
Yeah, it's such a brutal fight. So you see, now's at so many stacks. He's at 34, and if you look over at Ludwig on the top, you'll see he gets these little like these little red things there, boom. So that's whenever a taunt goes off on a target, and then it instantly goes over and punches Zalia. And they don't have a battle res available. They used it earlier on some of their previous deaths. So even though they have frag available as a Death Knight to battle res Zalia, they don't have a charge available. So then frag goes ahead and taunts Ludwig to help now reset, and then he ends up going down also, and then they don't have enough damage to clean off this pool.
I think what happened there was actually Zalia getting harpooned. He got gripped into a shell from Tortolia, and that's why he dropped so low, and that's why he died. So, I mean, you kind of have to prepare for the hooks, because as we talked about earlier, just going to be range targets that do get hooked. So just pulling the mobs on top without having the dwarf racial, with getting hooks on top of Ludwig while there's the shells going out, it's just a really risky pull, and it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, we've seen a number of times where multiple different teams have been taken down by harpoons, and people have not been focusing them down, trying to get them eliminated very quickly, or kind of coordinating when they're going to be stunning and making sure that they're not going to be able to hook anybody when you're trying to drop Necrotic or something like that. Because, like, you're right, it did hook Zalia, but it very easily could have hooked Now in, and it could have been his demise instead of it. Could have been Now's demise instead of Zalia's. There we go.
It was his demise eventually.
Eventually. So, at this point, they are going to be going on to Game 2, which will be Shrine of the Storm. So don't go anywhere, guys. Mythic EU versus Abrakeydabra, Game 2, right after this. The doctor is in here as Abrakeydabra is up 1 against Mythic EU, taking us into Shrine of the Storm here. Many wipes, many of the dungeon has been destroying teams lately, Sours. What are we looking for on this matchup here? Do you think Abrakeydabra can take the full 2-0 sweep?
I think we're looking for a dungeon that's been known to destroy teams. It's Shrine of the Storm. I think they can get the 2-0. They did it in time trials. They were faster than Mythic EU. But it's a very small difference in time. It's a difference in time that can really come down to just a little bit of RNG, a little bit of movement, maybe something goes well or you do more damage or not. So you see, like, only 11 seconds between two teams. That means that, like, that can be made up. That's not like they did one pull more efficient or one, like, huge thing more efficient. That's just small quirks within a dungeon run.
And one more thing as well is that Abrakeydabra actually played Shrine already on the tournament, while Method and Method EU didn't, sorry. So they could have just watched them do their strategy, kind of the same as we saw in Freehold, right? Abrakeydabra had the chance to watch Method EU and adapt their strategy. So maybe the same thing happened. Method EU was watching, seeing what Abrakeydabra does, and then maybe adjust some of their strategy to just be faster.
Yeah, we'll have to see as they look at that map, because we've seen a number of different times where teams are always adjusting and be able to take some time to be able to practice on it. But you always have to look at how affixes are changing from week to week. We're always having Fortified, for example, or Tyrannical, depending on the dungeon we're looking at here. But going into Shrine of the Storm here, Abrakeydabra really wants to be able to take this 2-0 and be able to sweep Method down into that lower bracket as we go into Shrine of the Storm.
Yeah, and one more thing about Shrine, that Abrakeydabra actually had some struggle when they played it yesterday. They had Aqu'sirr die in the first boss, and they had Aqu'sirr die in the third boss, without a battle res available to them because they don't have a DK, obviously. So they definitely got to watch out that they're not having those mistakes again, because Method EU is definitely a very good team. They're the best team, right? So they got to watch out that they don't make any of those mistakes if they want to win here.
Yep, and we do see big pulls coming out of both teams here, as Method EU and Abrakeydabra end up pulling a lot of the trash and then snapping it onto the Brazier, just in order to be able to get these mobs grouped up and deal with explosives really easily. Method EU electing to use their Bloodlust while Abrakeydabra is sitting there holding on it, being patient, probably going to be looking to pop it on Aqu'sirr.
Yeah, so definitely a difference in strategy already here, as Method EU just uses their Bloodlust while Abrakeydabra doesn't. You can see Divine Field and now both just kiting back up, because there's just so many casters here, and the casters are so dangerous because mainly because of their Water Blast that they constantly cast on a tank, which is a huge magic damage nuke if it's not interrupted. They're just, you know, Proud Warrior is usually not very well when it comes to magic damage. They are doing really well against physical damage, but these Water Blasts, they are not physical damage. Yep,
and we do actually see the pulls go down within a couple seconds between the two teams. Even though Method EU did elect to use their Bloodlust there, maybe they just decided that it was a little bit safer in order for them to pop that Bloodlust just a little bit earlier there and have a little bit higher consistency with the pull, where Abrakeydabra said that we really don't need it. We can end up doing this. And then Divine Field's kiting and just like them allowing the mobs to be grouped up for prolonged periods of time really allows for more efficient cleave on the side of Abrakeydabra. You actually do see now jumping out of the pack, running away from all those casts, trying to not get hit by those Water Blasts like you were saying. They're very dangerous for the tank.
Yeah, it's funny to see that both of the tanks are doing just very similar movement. You see both of the tanks on Abrakeydabra and Method EU are just going back up those stairs, making sure that as soon as they run out of interrupts, as you see Divine Field actually dropping really low, he procced his Bumsandi trinket, so not available for Divine Field, as now did not proc his. So definitely one difference to watch out for. It's kind of like a cheat death ability that can be very useful later on.
Yeah, just a little bit risky micromanagement, like a micromanagement of movement there on Divine Field's part, ending up getting punished there, popping his Bonsambi's bargain. Of course, that he won't have that cheat death trinket available for another 6 minutes. Method EU ends up cleaning up their trash pack just a little bit quicker, making their way into the Aqu'sirr room, and then popping their Shadow Melt, as you do see something mirrored similar on the side of Abrakeydabra there, proccing their first reaping and getting it melted off there.
Yeah, both teams doing the same thing here, but Method EU just doing everything a little bit faster at this point. They already engaged the boss as they started their RP earlier, so the boss spawn now. They did pull the trash on top of this, so this is pretty dangerous, because not only do you need to interrupt all the casters, but you also got some of the Reaping Souls that they didn't manage to Shadow Melt off. So you can see some of those Tormented Souls just casting the Grave Bolts on everybody while the boss is charging around. You have all those other boss abilities going in. The one thing that makes the difference between those two is, of course, Abrakeydabra using that Bloodlust now, as they still have it available to them.
Yeah, I don't know if the Bloodlust is going to be like a difference in like 10% of the boss's health, but it's definitely going to put Abrakeydabra and Method EU neck and neck here. Abrakeydabra and Method EU making sure that they do keep trash right on top of Aqu'sirr for more efficient cleave, making sure that you do interrupt that Templar of the spiritual in both the Spiritualists. The Spiritualists will end up casting a Mending Rapids cast, and whenever that does go off, it will end up healing all the mobs around it. So that's actually very important to be kicking. We also do have the Explosive affix, which we have not talked about. Explosive basically spawns balls around some engaged trash or bosses, and they end up having a decent amount of health. But Outlaw Rogues, of course, being very good at dealing with Explosive, but just something that you have to deal with damage priority-wise whenever that does end up spawning for you.
Yeah, see, Abrakeydabra, of course, catching up a little bit on boss percentage, but they're still slightly behind compared to Method EU, who are on their way to proc this intermission phase on 50%. So as soon as the boss hits 50%, he will split up into 3, and now those 3 Aqualings will actually just mirror all the abilities of the boss. So this is a very dangerous intermission phase here. Not only do you need each one of them to be tanked, because if they're not, they will cast Soul Blast, which does so much damage. And then on top of that, you also have those surging rushes going through that we don't want to see anyone get hit by those and fall off. And then you just have a lot of other difficult mechanics here going on.
Yep, the surging rush is coming through on the side of Method EU. You do see now end up charging one of those Aqualings. It looks like Gingy ended up maybe getting nicked by one of the surging rushes. As long as he doesn't end up falling off the side, that's going to be good for them. You have actually seen both groups elected to pull the apprentices off to the side. Those end up casting a Tempest cast, and what that ends up doing is spawns like a tornado that ends up just denying a little bit more area in a fight that you already have to be kind of aware of where all the Aqualings end up casting their surging rush, or Aqu'sirr ends up casting his surging rush. So just another thing that you have to be aware of whenever you are dealing with those apprentices.
Yeah, so there's actually a very slight difference in percentage, as Method U actually was on 31% before they killed the apprentices, and Abrakeydabra is on 30% before they killed the apprentices. So there's a very tiny difference. It might be the difference in just having pulled some more droplets compared to the other team. Not completely sure if this will change their route later on in the dungeon, but Method U already down with the boss, using their shroud here as they go past this mini boss. Definitely don't want to deal with that one. And now we're going to see a huge pull, proccing their 40% reaping wave.
So the difference in this trash is going to be probably in how you end up dealing with those like enforcers and initiates after Galecaller Fae and Brother Ironhull, as of course you do need 60% count whenever you do make it to that bridge past Galecaller Fae and Brother Ironhull after they do end up dying. You do see Divine Field here jumping in, pulling all these mobs, while Method EU is doing a very similar pull with all these Ironhull apprentices here and Temple attendants.
Yeah, Method EU just a little bit faster here, as they killed the boss faster, of course, and they killed some of the mobs already. They are in 37%. All they have to do is finish up those last high HP mobs to proc their reaping, and once they do proc their reaping, they will just jump over the bridge, skip the elemental, and then you see the Shadow Melt go through. Now, in the very first week, second week, we saw some of the teams failing their skip with the Shadow Melt, but teams adjusted pretty well, and they are learning how to do it properly, and we haven't seen a lot of fails anymore since.
Yep, just a lot more practice and a lot more time in order to be able to master that skip, as you do actually see it come through Method EU. On Method EU's side, doing it super well. Abrakeydabra looking to mirror it and do a very similar pull here, making sure that Divine Field does have his leap up, he leaps out, and then they all pop their Shadow Meld there, making sure that they do drop combat with all the mobs there.
Yeah, Method EU doing a pretty substantial pull, as they're at the other side of the bridge and pulling the whole area here, except, I believe, the patrol at the bridge. Yeah, you can see the patrol is actually not engaged, so pulling the rest of it all together. Now, these mobs, there's some very dangerous ones here. As you can see, this Tempest, these tornadoes here, the high tornadoes in the back, these are the ones that do a lot of damage. The ones that are next to Celia, not so much. But the higher tornadoes that are on Galecaller Fae later as well, you can pretty much get one shot by them, or two shot. So you definitely want to make sure that you dodge them. As we see Method EU just finishing off the mobs and doing a very good job.
Yep, Dr. J ended up proccing his cheat death there. Obviously, having that available for him is very good, as he does not end up going down to one of the cleaves there. Abrakeydabra cleaning up their pull, as we do see Method EU pulling Galecaller Fae and Brother Ironhull with a bunch of these initiates here, making sure that they do end up killing those explosives.
Yeah, we saw the Shroud come out, the same thing as we see on Abracadabra's side. They just kind of stealth through the initiates, pull the boss, and pull the initiates that are around the room. And once Galecaller Fae is dead, they will pull the rest of the trash on top. So very efficient strategy by both of these teams coming in. But Method EU having a little bit more percentage here. So, and also pulling the boss earlier, of course. So for this boss here, you definitely want to watch out for Galecaller Fae, as she's the most difficult of those two. It's because of the slicing blast, it just constantly needs to be interrupted.
Yep, so both teams avoiding proccing their third reaping of the instance are going to need to be able to get to 60% count prior to skipping all of the trash and making their way onto the bridge. So just something to end up thinking about of how they end up pulling after Brother Ironhull and Galecaller Fae ends up going down. We do probably expect to see them pull like an enforcer or a couple mobs into Brother Ironhull once Galecaller Fae does end up going down. Brother Ironhull here casting a cleave, making sure that everybody, all the melee, get out of the front of that, and just making sure that they are trying to be a little bit more efficient with their DPS here. Obviously, Galecaller Fae is higher priority, as her slicing blast cast is very deadly for the whole entire group. And once Brother Ironhull is just by himself, you can actually just kind of pull trash on him pretty easily.
Yeah, this is actually so efficient by Method EU. They barely ever have to move the boss here, as they're not interrupting the slicing blast whenever she has the buff on her. Meaning, if you don't interrupt it, you don't get the tornado spawn, as you see in Abrakeydabra side. You will get the damage from the Tempest on your group, but as long as it doesn't kill you, it's going to be easy for Sally to just heal the damage up. But just not having those tornadoes means that not only is it safer because they can't kill you, but you also don't have to move away from them, kind of just increasing your damage on the boss, basically. Method EU kills Gauntlet and only his brother Ironhall left, and now we're going to see Sally just go ahead and pull some trash on top of the boss.
Yeah, those Tempests normally aren't too dangerous unless that Swiftness ward is out, and those Tempest Tornadoes do end up going over it, forcing them to have increased speed here. We actually do see Abrakeydabra pulling some of these mobs, some more of these Initiates and this Ironhall Apprentice on top of Brother Ironhall once Galecaller Fade does go down, as we do see Zaylia on the side of Method EU running off to the side here, as they have also pulled a pretty sizable amount of trash on top of the boss as well.
Yeah, so not only did they pull the patrol that they shrouded earlier, but they also pulled this one patrolling enforcer that Zaylia and Aqu'sirr both are going to pull on the side. Now, this is just so efficient because you need to kill the boss anyway, right? You have to kill Brother Ironhall, but once he's the only one left alive, he really doesn't do anything. So whenever you can pull something on top, it's just so efficient damage-wise and time-wise, and there's no affix preventing them from to do so. You do have Explosive, of course, that you have to deal with, but Volcanic really a non-affix, really. All you have to do is dodge out of the volcanoes, and that's definitely something those teams can do.
Yep, and we actually do see on the side of Method EU, they do end up getting their 60% reaping. Most of them ending up mounting up, except for now, who pops his Lightfoot Potion, ends up fearing a bunch of mobs, and they are running. They're running their way through onto the bridge here. They're going to be popping their Shadow Meld in order to be able to drop combat with all the trash and the reaping that they have recently pulled. Whereas on the side of Abrakeydabra here, they have 3% until they are able to do a very similar skip to what we've seen from Method EU. So Method EU here just being maybe like 15, 20, 30 seconds faster.
So the one thing to note here is that Abrakeydabra is actually doing a different strategy to Method EU here. Method EU procced the 60% on the boss and just straight up skipped all those enforcers. Well, Abrakeydabra does this one pull where they pull 5 enforcers on top of a ritualist, and they just get a lot of percentage here. Now the difficulty on this pull is that the enforcers, they just do so much damage to the tank that Divine Field just can't tank them. He needs to kite them, he needs a Ring of Peace coming in, and the problem is as well that the ritualist is a caster and constantly needs to be interrupted. And on top of that, you have 59% trash, so if you kill any of the mobs, you will trigger the reaping, and you don't want that. This is why they try to kill them evenly while Divine Field just kiting in a circle. Now we will see if this will actually be an improved strategy or if they will be faster than Method EU, but Method EU already 65%.
Yeah, I actually don't know if I love the strategy from Abrakeydabra. Basically, you only need 60%, and you just need to end up killing the rest of the trash for the instance for you to be able to complete count. But Abrakeydabra going a little bit over count here, as Method EU actually ended up pulling those cultists and those tentacles into that one of the Depth Bringer packs, which ended up being super good because then they were able to do the more dangerous multi-Depth Bringer pack into like by itself, as opposed to doing the like both of those packs that patrol back and forth across the bridge together here, where Abrakeydabra is probably going to end up skipping one of those patrolling packs on the bridge.
Yeah, Abrakeydabra definitely on the back foot here as they're pulling those tentacles, and as you said, they probably need one more of the patrolling group on top of this to get enough trash percentage. Now the only thing that will kind of make them catch up is if they would pull the tentacles on top of the patrol, but they're not doing that, so definitely not catching up here with this single pull, as Method is already done with the bridge area. All they have left to do is the double dwellers here, and then they're going to be done with trash until the last boss room.
Yep, you do see Zaylia sneaking ahead here in stealth, proccing Lord Stormsong's RP, so as soon as they do down these Abyss Dweller pack, they will have a reduced amount of time for the roleplay of Lord Stormsong before he does end up spawning. You're able to engage him in combat, while Abrakeydabra here, popping their Shroud here, ending up pulling one of the packs, as you do see a Shine running ahead, proccing the RP on Lord Stormsong, so they additionally do have reduced time before they are able to actually engage Lord Stormsong.
Yeah, Method EU just dealing with the last dwellers here. They proc their 80% reaping, that's why you see the Shadow Meld coming out, and this is why it's so important to have the tank as a Night Elf. You want everyone to be a Night Elf, because in Shrine you're skipping so many reaping waves, you're skipping so much trash. You just need the Shadow Meld, because else you're just wasting so much time on just having your tank die over and over, need to rest him back up because he just doesn't have a Shadow Meld.
Yep.
So this is why we see the Night Elf on both sides and Method EU engaging the boss here.
Yeah, no team you actually don't end up dealing with any of the reaping in this instance, strangely enough, just because of the power of Shadow Meld and how you're actually able to line of sight a bunch of the packs. Abrakeydabra here finally DPSing down their pack as they do get the trash to 78%, while Method EU already 66% on Lord Stormsong here.
Yeah, Method EU just... They are so fast. I mean, we talked about the time trial times, Method EU only being second after Abra and #1 spot, but the difference is really small. And as I said, Abrakeydabra already played their strategy on the screen, and you know what? It also could have been that Mythic EU had a good strategy. They just never really played it cleanly in the time trials. That can always happen to you. Maybe you have a strategy where you get a very fast time, but in those 5 tries that you have in the time trials, maybe in each try something went wrong. Maybe you had a death here, something wasn't very clean there. And maybe that's the reason why their time was so slow, or so slow.
Yeah, so slow.
Slower than Abrakeydabra, I meant to say.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't slow by any means. You actually do see some of the Reaping ending up getting on top of Lord Stormsong here, which is actually kind of scary because you do end up having your tank looking to spell reflect a lot of these void bolts, and if they do end up proccing Divine Field's spell reflect on accident, he could actually end up getting hit by one of those bolts. You've actually seen the Mindbender go on Xaylia multiple times here, which is actually super good on the side of Abrakeydabra. That Ancient Mindbender, of course, mind controlling you and then forcing you to get DPS down below 50% health. Obviously, rogues can end up cloaking it off or something like that, but as long as it doesn't end up going on Miras or any of the DPS here, it's actually super good on the side of Mythic EU. Very similar for Abrakeydabra, as Lord Stormsong does go down for Mythic EU. Abrakeydabra, unfortunately, only at 55-ish% here on Lord Stormsong, though.
Yeah, so Abrakeydabra, the last time around when they had those Reaping Souls on top of the boss, they actually had Aqu'sirr dying. But this time around, they did manage to have everyone survive. They did kill the Reaping Souls, so at this point, it shouldn't be a big deal. But just getting the mind control constantly on Swagfist, constantly getting it on this Windwalker, which is, of course, so much worse compared to getting it a healer, as you mentioned, Mythic EU getting it on Xaylia. Now, Mythic EU already on this gauntlet here, where they just have to swim through this area to get to the last boss. Now, we've seen a couple of different strategies in this last boss area, but most of the teams just kind of engage the boss first, making sure they get the damage buff on the healer, and then do some trash.
Yeah, we've actually seen a lot of teams recently have a little bit of a different adaptation of pulling 2 of these eel packs prior to getting the promises of power debuff. Just a little bit safer, as you do not end up having to have a little bit more of a risk from your healer ending up going down from the eels if your tank did end up needing to kite. So you do see on the side of Mythic EU, they do end up grabbing those 2 eel packs prior to pulling Volzith here, and you actually do see Bloodlust available for both teams, which is something very important to highlight. Both teams are going to be able to 2-phase Volzith, getting him down to approximately 70-ish% HP in the first round, and then once he does end up casting his intermission phase, they're going to be able to use their Bloodlust and burn him down all the way down to 0.
Yeah, it's so important to just not get a second intermission phase, because the intermission phase just takes so long, and it's also scary, really. There's definitely things that can happen in intermission phase, especially with explosives, stuff like that, spawning on other denizens, maybe if all your melee are on the other one, and on top of that, you also need to let one of the casts go through for maximum efficiency. So things can happen, and you definitely don't want the second intermission phase, as we see the first one happening for Mythic EU here.
Yep, so Abrakeedabra's strategy and how they ended up pulling the trash was actually what kind of set them behind. We actually did see a shine whenever they were on that bridge pull, kind of stealthing ahead, not being super damage efficient on that pack on the bridge, and then they ended up not killing one of the Abyss Dweller packs as well in order to be able to kill the Enforcer pull, which actually took them a decent amount of time, where Mythic EU strategy just seems like it's a little bit better. Both of the teams here, though, or not both of the teams, Mythic EU here in on the intermission here for Volzith, where Abrakeydabra is pulling that 2-pack of eels like I highlighted prior to this.
Yeah, we saw Frag actually proccing his cheat death here, so fortunately both of the rogues, of course, if something goes wrong, they do have the cheat death available to them, so no need to battle rest. But even if someone would go down, they do have still 2 battle rests available to them. The only one who can't die, of course, is Xaylia, and Xaylia, of course, having the debuff on him as well, which not only does it increase his damage by 90%, but it also reduces his max HP by 90%. So any sort of damage that hits him will basically one-shot him, unless it's an explosive go through, because the explosive is percentage health damage, meaning that his max HP is lower and it will do less damage to him.
Yep, and you do actually see Mythic EU pulling these 2 Forgotten Denizens and the Sunken Denizen, making sure that they do get casts on the Consume Essence in order to be able to not allow them to heal to full and allowing Xaylia to die. They do kick Volzith here, and they pop their Bloodlust, trying to DPS down Volzith as quickly as possible in order for them to not get another intermission, which would actually be costly time-wise. Abrakeydabra has also engaged Volzith, pushing him into that intermission, but it looks like Mythic EU is just, I would say, like 45 seconds ahead at this point.
Yeah, Mythic EU is just so incredible fast. They're probably going to improve their time again compared to time trials, and they're going to beat Abrakeedabra's best time as well, most likely. But the best time in time trials was 1927, and they're not even 18 minutes into the dungeon, and Mythic EU is about to finish off this boss, and they only have to kill a couple of eels, and then they're going to be done.
Yep, and you actually do see those manifestations of the deep that are spawned by Volzith ending up spawning explosives out in the back. A couple of those end up going off and getting the group incredibly low, but it looks like they're going to be able to down Volzith here in just a couple seconds, so they're only going to need to pull 2 packs of eels before the instance does end up finishing, as they will get 100% count here. You actually did see Fragments ending up going down there, as he did not have that cheat death available to him. Xaylia electing to use a battle res here because it's just a little bit quicker to cast, but the instance is relatively over here for Method EU, as they just do need these 2 packs of Eels here.
Yeah, very fast time by Method EU, and just such a clean run too, except this very last death here of Magnus because of the explosives, as you mentioned. But other than that, just such a clean run and so fast compared to their time trial. They're not even 19 minutes in, and they're going to finish up this dungeon doing a one-to-one to Abrakeydabra here.
In spectacular fashion, Method EU bounces back here on Shrine of the Storm, and as you mentioned, massively improving on their time trial time and beating Abrakeydabras here. So it looked like Abra was probably on pace to hit their original time here, Sours, but it's just not enough when you're going up against Method EU.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, oh, when you've got 2 deathless runs of a dungeon and then one team wins, it means they had a better route. The Method EU ended up having 1 death. It didn't really cost them anything. So it was still basically came down to a route between the 2 teams, where on Aqu'sirr, it was pretty neck and neck. Method EU was a little bit ahead, so they didn't look like they gained that much time with their Bloodlust pool they had at the end of the dungeon, but I guess it ended up giving them quite a few more seconds when they downed Aqu'sirr. And then Abrakeydabra had a lot different percentage of trash going into the second boss, where the difference between their strategy and Method EU's with how they handled trash right there is, I think, really what set the 2 teams apart and created a huge difference between the 2 teams and allowed Method EU to ultimately clinch out this win.
And it just ended up being a little bit different of how they ended up dealing with the Cultist Bridge, how they ended up dealing with the Abyss Dwellers, and like pulling those Enforcers like we were talking about a little bit earlier. And it just kind of put them a little bit difference in trash count between the 2 teams. And that ended up costing them just time, because those Enforcers aren't super time efficient, and they're actually kind of scary for your tank. So I would like to see Abrakeydabra kind of try to man up, or either do those 2 Cultist packs together, or merge one of the Cultist packs with the Tentacles.
Yeah, I feel like if they're merging the Cultist pack into the Tentacles, their strategy is still good. But if they don't risk that, then they're not going to beat a strategy like Method use if they play it so cleanly.
Yeah, with that, and especially focusing on that strategy, let's take a look at that quick clip we have of the second boss here, because it really was, as you mentioned, what helped them pull ahead of quite a bit.
This is kind of like the turning point of the dungeon. So they're at a little bit less kill count than Abrakeydabra was at this point, but they've got quite a few more trash mobs in there. They actually have enough trash mobs that they're fighting with Brother Ironhole and Galecaller Fae to get them to 60% count and spawn the next Reaping Wave. Then they can skip it all. However, Abrakeydabra, you see, they finished the boss at 57% count, and they decided to do this quad Tide Sage Enforcer pull. And so Tide Sage Enforcers have a ton of health, they do a ton of damage, and there's also that large area denial on the ground and those water swirlies everywhere. And so when you're running a triple melee DPS comp, you can't really stand on the ground where all those swirlies are, because you'll die. But you could on the bridge pull more mobs together, because you just have to run around in circles around those guys to dodge them. So it's a little bit more inefficient and more dangerous to do this Enforcer pull than a larger bridge pull.
Yeah, especially if the tank's not even able to stand in melee, because getting 3 or 4 deep smashes is going to murder them very quickly there. So, but that does bring us on into a Game 3 on King's Rest. So don't go anywhere, guys. Game 3 between Method EU and Abrakeydabra right on the other side of this break. Method EU, with a powerful strategy in Shrine of the Storm, takes that second map, moving us into Game 3 on King's Rest. At this point, we've seen both teams playing on King's Rest so far, Sours, and when there's very little variation in terms of strategy, it's a very linear dungeon going into it. It seems like Method EU's consistency and their execution have really been what can carry them.
That's right. So the layout of Shrine of the Storm and King's Rest is fairly similar, right? There's only so much you can really do movement-wise to get through the dungeon, but King's Rest is really limited in how you pull the dungeon. So a lot of it's going to come down to not wiping on the first boss, and also making sure to heal your tank after the Shade of Zul so he doesn't end up dying.
Yeah, in addition to that, we actually did see Abrakeydabra doing a really massive pull with all the embalming fluids and the constructs in the Machimba room, which is actually a pretty big adaptation, and it forces them to play just a little bit better in that Machimba room, so that puts pressure on them to be able to perform and do that pull very clean. Whereas the first for the first boss room, we obviously expect everybody to pull all 4 packs in that room and just DPS it down, but with that Machimba room adaptation that we did see out of Abrakeydabra yesterday, that is definitely something that we also need to be watching out for.
Yeah, I think at that point it's going to be one of their advantages, and hopefully to be able to overtake Method EU, because they need to be able to play these hyper-aggressive strategies here in Aqu'sirr, because otherwise they're just going to get outmatched.
They definitely need to show up for this key here. As we see, Method EU actually do so well in King's Rest in the past. Now the only thing to mention though, that Sally actually did go down the last time on the very first boss. They ended up recovering and managed to finish off the boss without Salia, but if mistakes like that happen to Method EU, then that's a chance for Abrakeydabra to actually just sneak a win here.
And they'll have to capitalize as we're in Game 3. Winner going into the grand finals, starting it up on King's Rest.
Yeah, so we don't expect to see huge strategy differences here, as this dungeon doesn't really allow to have those kind of strategy changes if it's so straightforward and not just, there's just not that much trash available to you. So we see the strat coming out from both of those teams just going into the first boss room, and now of course we want both of those teams to pull the whole room, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we actually want to see them pull it and make sure that the mobs are grouped up for prolonged periods of time. And the reason for that being is if you have more efficient cleave on the side of Abrakeydabra or Mythic EU, you could end up doing that first pull maybe 20 or even 30 seconds faster, which is actually not only more dangerous, but it ends up also being, but it also ends up just costing you a lot of time over the course of the instance, which is what we ended up seeing Method in A, how they ended up kind of edging out Abrakeydabra there yesterday.
Yeah, so this huge pull coming in by both teams. He has to pull the whole room. 4 packs on top of each other now. They're both popping their bloodlust here just because there's so many things going on at the very same time. You have 3 witch doctors that you have to deal with. They constantly cast those deathly chills and do so much damage if they're not interrupted. You have 3 witch doctors who cause a Shadow Bolt volley too that needs to be interrupted. So this is why you see a lot of interrupts going out. You see the tanks just kind of kiting back because at some point you just run out of interrupts and you run out of Sucia.
Yeah, you actually do see Divine Field actually standing in melee for a little bit longer, actually doing a significant amount more damage than we actually did see coming out of now. I think Divine Field was the top of his group for a little while before he ended up leaping out after that Avatar did end up falling. Now there are only 2 Enraged Champions left available for Abrakeydabra to kill, whereas on the side of Method EU, they're doing the pull and at a very similar time as the Champions fall at a very similar time for both teams, spawning the Golden Serpent here.
Yeah, Abrakeydabra being slightly faster, most likely because of the reason that you said, the Divine Field just managed to stay in longer. They had a longer CC rotation, longer interrupts, making Divine Field just staying there longer. And we all know just how much damage a Proud Warrior does if he's able to DPS. So the longer they can stay in, the faster the trash is going to die. And we see both of the bosses being engaged on top of the Reaping, and now we want to watch out for the Spit Gold debuff and the RNG of this boss too, as Dr. J actually got hit by one of those swirlies on the ground, and he does have reduced damage done and reduced HP.
Yeah, I think it was just a Shadow Smash, so I think that might just be reduced health to him, but that's still not very good whenever you are dealing with the Golden Serpent dot on you. Basically, it's so RNG whenever you say that, just because of how this Grievous Affix ends up working with this very dangerous dot on the side of the Golden Serpent. Whenever that Spit Gold does go on you on this Tyrannical 19 setting, it's going to be very challenging in order to be able to top yourself up, especially if you don't have any Swift Mins or otherwise other utility available for you. We actually do see on the side, Okay, so we see on the side of Abrakeydabra, Aqu'sirr not electing to run Mass Entangle. I actually have not seen on the side of Method EU, because we did actually see from JB, he actually did elect to run Mass Entangle in this dungeon. Yeah,
I think JB was the only druid who chose to run this dungeon, this Mass Entanglement here. Most other druids just kind of have them slowly die over the time, just letting them get closer to the boss to get some damage increase actually on the rogues and on the other damage dealers and on the tank too, as he gets the resets. And then it's really about RNG here. The last time we saw Sally dying here at the very last percentage of the boss, because Sally got 3 of the Spit Golds in a row, and at some point you're just going to run out of defensives, right? You get the first Spit Gold, you use Bark Skin. You get the second one, you use Iron Bark. And then what do you use? You have nothing left, and then it's when it's getting very scary.
Yeah, so there's actually a big difference in damage here between Xaylia and Aqu'sirr. Xaylia doing about 8k DPS, while Aqu'sirr sitting here at 1k. And Method EU is actually past Abrakeydabra here, even though Abrakeydabra ended up pulling the Golden Serpent maybe 10 or 15 seconds ahead.
Yeah, so Method EU just having, well, they're very same damage-wise. You can see the percentage of the boss just kind of moving at this very same time. Now the fact that Sally is doing more damage, it could be a lot of RNG factors, right? If you get a lot of Spit Golds on you as a healer, of course you can't be doing damage. And if you don't get them on the rogues when they have the cloak ready, then you're just going to be busy healing so much. And that's going to be the main difference for them, right? If they do get the Spit Golds on the rogues whenever they have their immunity ready, their cloak, that's just going to be so efficient for them, because they skip a whole debuff. They're going to be able to do more damage, and so on. As the boss HP is still very equal between those two teams, but both of the healers are running pretty low on mana, as you see Aqu'sirr just barely having any mana left.
Yeah, I've seen Divine Field sitting in this 4-stack of Grievous for prolonged periods of time. He's actually sitting very, very low. He ends up popping that shield wall and is finally getting up to 60% health, but he's still stuck in that 4-stack of Grievous, as you do end up needing to be topped over 90% health in order to be able to get out of that Grievous. As you do actually see Swagfist dropping incredibly low on the side of Abrakeydabra, hitting 6%, but he does end up coming back up. He drops so low again, but it looks like it's going to be okay as he does not end up going down.
Yeah, so this might be a problem here because Aqu'sirr, as I said, he's completely He does have the debuff on him, but the problem is there's Grievous. Swagfist was actually standing in one of those pools on the ground and got a tick, and now he has 4 Grievous stacks. Aqu'sirr is completely out of mana, but they didn't manage to finish off the boss here. Now they can use a Fish Feast to get their HP back up, but this could have caused trouble if the boss would have lasted any longer because Aqu'sirr was completely as Mythic EU already engaging on this trash gauntlet here.
Yep, and we actually do predict that Azalea and Aqu'sirr are going to be running and pulling these 2 constructs that do end up casting that frontal stun ability that you definitely need to move out of. We actually did see from the East region, from a company, one of their tanks ending up getting stunned by that, and they ended up wiping just because of that stun. We actually do see the Ursul's Vortex coming out there on those mobs there. Whenever they do end up jumping out, the Ursul's will just grip them back in on the side of Mythic EU, so allowing for a significant, more efficient cleave here. And then here comes the constructs menacingly, walking into the room, ending up casting that Suppression Slam, but it looks like everybody's going to be out of range of that first Suppression Slam there.
Yeah, so in this trash gauntlet, on the tournament realms, you have actually a set rotation. You always start with top left, and then you go counterclockwise. On live servers, it's totally random which trash spawns first, but because of the tournament integrity, all of those spawns are going to be set. So both of those teams are going to be fighting the same mobs in the same rotation, and both of them, of course, as you mentioned, just pulling those Guardians on top, just because there's a little bit of role play in between those trash packs until they get activated. So in this downtime, you just want to be dealing with those Guardians just to be more efficient.
Yeah, and the reason that you do actually see Abrakeydabra kind of slowly slipping behind here is because of after the Golden Serpent, they actually had to sit down and eat, make sure they topped off their Grievous there in order to be able to get out of Grievous there because Aqu'sirr was out of mana while Azalea had everybody out of that Grievous, so they actually just ended up walking into this Gauntlet room, proccing their Gauntlet RP just a few seconds ahead, so they are just a little bit ahead of Abrakeydabra because of that. So something to know about the trash that Abrakeydabra does have on their side is that the King casts a lightning rod ability, and whenever that lightning rod ability does go off, you're actually able to Typhoon it. So that is why we have actually seen Azalea and Aqu'sirr both electing to run Typhoon in this instance, among other reasons.
Yeah, so this next trash that Mythic EU just engaged with their 40% Reaping Wave is the Queen and the King. Now, the only very difficult thing to watch out here, especially as a melee, is the King sometimes starts casting a Blade Storm towards that target. And there's no real indicator for when he starts the Blade Storm, so you definitely want to watch out and just kind of be on range already, especially Outlaws, just having more range in general, just making sure that you're not too close to them. And then on top of that, you also see the Mind Control that just happened on Frag here on Mythic EU side, and the Mind Control can't really be removed by any of those players just because they're of course Alliance, so they don't have the Blood Elf dispel, and they also don't have any other offensive dispel.
Yep, and the Reaping does end up dying here for Mythic EU in just a couple more seconds, while as Abrakeydabra is dealing with that similar trash that we were talking about. Divine Field dropping incredibly low here, sitting at a 3-stack of Grievous, getting to 4 as Aqu'sirr is looking to top him up there with the Swiftman, and Divine Field finally gets out of Grievous as Aqu'sirr starts healing himself up here. The Reaping has been dealt with by Abrakeydabra, but they do still have that King on their side.
Yeah, so one thing to note as well here is that once you get this Reaping Wave, this 40%, it's really important that you still single target the King and the Queen, because the faster those 2 mobs die, the faster the next trash is going to spawn. The Reaping is not as important as long as no one dies to the Reaping Wave, so you definitely want to make sure that you have this efficient damage on the important mobs, the ones that need to die first. As Mythic EU just kind of charging ahead here, already done with the Gauntlet, they're going to skip this construct here with the Shroud, and then they're already going to be in the next boss room.
Yep, it's important to note that since they are skipping this construct, they will not have access to that Loa Raptor thing in order to be able to get their checkpoint. If they do elect to skip this construct, which they are with their Shroud, it's just something to think of. Obviously, the teams are not playing with the intent of wiping here, so they do not care. They're skipping. They're full steam ahead as Mythic EU does make it in this Embalming Fluid room.
So we'll see what Mythic EU ends up doing here, if they pull all those fluids plus the construct, or if they're just going to deal with those fluids first. Now, there's not an affix that really prevents them from doing those huge pulls. There's no bolstering or anything like that. There's no bursting, but we do see them pull those 2 constructs on top of each other. Now, the difficulty with this is that sometimes people get entombed in one of those coffins on the side here. So you definitely want to make sure that you get them out immediately as those green pools on the ground spawn everywhere.
Yeah, but the entomb is pretty easy to predict as it is on the closest tomb to the player, relative to the player here. So making sure that the player is positioned next to the tomb that the rest of his group does know he's going to be next to is very important here. Aqu'sirr and Jay kind of walking in the room a little bit later. If they did in fact get entombed on the wrong side of the room, that would have been disastrous on the side of Abrakeydabra. But it looks like we are seeing mirrored pulls here with all the Embalming Fluids and the constructs together for both Mythic EU and Abrakeydabra.
Yeah, so those constructs actually need to die at the very same time, because if you kill one of them, you get the Reaping Reaping Wave. So you want to kill them at the same time so you get out of combat briefly. So you manage to pre-pot, you manage to just get a drink down. So once you get the Reaping Wave, you can actually just immediately engage the boss. So this is why we see Method EU just killing them at the same time, and they're engaging the boss now. And Abrakeydabra not that far behind. They actually managed to catch up a little bit here as they were further behind on the gauntlet. So this is very close between those two.
Yeah, this is actually super good for Abrakeydabra. They ended up just dealing with those embalming fluids and those constructs just a little bit quicker. We do actually have Bloodlust available for both teams in approximately 30 seconds, and it's going to be interesting to see how they end up using it. We obviously know Abrakeydabra ended up using their Bloodlust on Machimba yesterday, but seeing the strategy coming out from Method EU and where they elect to use their Bloodlust relative to where Abrakeydabra probably will end up using it is kind of important. So basically the only two options here are on Machimba and the pack after Machimba, which has multiple Berserkers and Hex Priests.
Ooh, now dropping so low by the boss here, as this boss has a lot of tank damage. So especially if one of those Drain Fluids gets cloaked or immune in some way, because this boss has an ability called Drain Fluid. It will target a random member, and then he will just channel the Drain Fluid on this person, doing single target damage. Now, if you cloak this away, or you vanish or Shadow Melt, then the tank will have aggro, and this boss just does so much damage, as we see now drop low. Sometimes you might just want to rather have it on you instead of using ability to get rid of it, so the tank just can get a moment of breathing time to make sure he survives.
Yeah, and we actually do see the Bloodlust coming through for Abrakeydabra, but the boss's HP isn't moving as quickly as you would like to see. It's moving at relative the same pace just because of that Reaping ending up dying, forcing the melee kind of out of melee range in order to not reap the full benefits of having good uptime on Machimba during that Bloodlust here. Method EU, of course, electing to hold their Bloodlust for a couple more seconds. Maybe they'll end up using it at the bottom part of Machimba here after the next Entomb, but we will have to wait to see that.
Yeah, Method EU, the last time they played this dungeon, actually saved their Bloodlust and used it in the trash afterwards. Now, the one thing that Method EU changed this time around was that the next pull that they did, not only did they pull the double Berserkers plus the double Casters, but they also pulled the Raptors on top. Now, in the end, it didn't really make a huge difference because they still had to kill the Brutes separately. So they did the same trash in two pulls. They just pulled it a little bit differently. So I'm not completely sure if I like their Bloodlust strategy here compared to Abrakeydabra. But, you know, Abrakeydabra just going ahead here in boss percentage. And if Abra can do the same trash pull later on in two pulls instead of three, just like Method EU, without the Bloodlust, then I feel like Abrakeydabra just used it more efficiently.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to see. We obviously do know that Abrakeydabra can do that pull and can do it well without that Bloodlust available, but making sure that they have good execution on the side of those Berserkers and those Hex Priests is very important, because those Hex Priests with their Void Bolt are very scary, and those Berserkers with that bleed is just super spooky, as we do see Machimba dropping below 10% for both teams here.
The damage is not even that bad compared from Abrakeydabra compared to Method EU. Abrakeydabra did use their Bloodlust, but Method EU is not that far behind at all. It's only a couple of seconds that they're killing the boss later here. So the time that they can make up from the Bloodlust on the trash pull might just put them ahead here, as Abrakeydabra is on their way to do this very dangerous double Berserker, double Caster pull. You see the Spectral Bolts being spell reflected by Divine Field, and you see the Berserker just coming in. Now the difficulty is the Casters plus Berserkers at the same time, as Divine Field actually has 3 bleeds on him. He might go down here.
Yeah, so popping a bunch of defensive Divine Field needs to, in order to be able to deal with all these bleeds from these Berserkers, this is actually very scary for him. Whereas on the side of Method EU, they did it, the same pull that you actually said, they actually did all of it except for that Beastmaster, but they did actually pull that Raptor in. That Raptor actually can be kind of scary, because if it does end up facing your melee and ends up doing that claw, it can actually be kind of scary in order to be able to how much area it ends up denying the whole entire group. Whereas on the side of Abrakeydabra, somebody does end up falling, they end up using their battle res there.
So Spectre is actually going down because he got 2 bleeds from the Berserker. He already had one, and then he was too close to one of the Berserkers, got a second one, and it was not healable for Aqu'sirr anymore. So they do lose 1 battle rest here. And the 5 seconds, the 5 seconds are going to matter so much, because those teams are so close to one another. So definitely a huge mistake coming in by Abrakeydabra here, especially because the rogues are all playing dwarf basically, and they can get rid of the bleed with their racial. So why have it on Swagfist? I mean, of course we do have the karma, the damage increase, so 1 on Swagfist is fine, but 2 was definitely a mistake.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that that was a mistake. Making sure that a Shiner Dr. J ended up getting a melee range of those Berserkers very quickly in order to be able to get that bleed on them and able to Stoneform is actually very important. Method EU does end up dealing with that Brute relatively quickly compared to on the side of Abrakeydabra, making sure that they did in fact get good use of Bloodlust, which was what we were highlighting a little bit earlier, and they have procced their 4th Reaping of the Instance as they've pulled it into this trash pack here.
Yeah, Method EU definitely just dealing with this a little bit faster. Now this is a pull we have seen some teams fail to as well and get full team wipes, because they're pulling a bunch of mobs on top of the Reaping Wave. Now this is dangerous in because of a lot of reasons, not only because you have all this area of denial from the Reaping Wave, but you also have the Berserker jump around, you have the bleed, you have the casters, but they're dealing with it very well on Method U side here as they finish up the trash. And now they only have to do one more trash pull to get their 96%. As you can see, there's a Z coming in here at the very back. So this is the last trash you need to kill, and then they're going to be done.
Yep. Abrakeydabra hot on their heels, finishing a trash pack right here, while Method U has pulled this trash right in front of the gate to the Shadow of Zul, which they will end up unlocking as soon as they end up killing the Council fight here. Method U DPSing it down, making sure that the Beastmaster does not end up Deadeye-shotting their tank or any of their DPS off the edge here, as we have seen in previous matches. Abrakeydabra here popping their Shroud, and they do a little bit different of a pull here. They end up doing this pull before this arcway, and they end up not pulling the trash in front of the Shadow of Zul bridge, and they end up just shrouding back through after this Council fight.
Yeah, this is probably going to give them the exact same amount of percentage that Method U has, but Method U already done. They do have the 96%. All that's left is this mini boss, the Shadow of Zul at the end, and they're engaging Kula here. Now, Kula, we've talked about this. This is the most dangerous boss out of the three because of the Severing Axe, which is a huge bleed, a 20 seconds debuff that does so much damage. And if it gets on the same person multiple times in a row, and you run out of defensives, you might as well just die. And we've seen a lot of healers just struggling with this debuff.
Yep, and we actually do see on the side of Abrakeydabra, they actually do a really good job of placing those bleeds on the rogues there and allowing them to stone form them off, but they are not going to have it available here for Kula, so it's definitely something to be thinking about whenever you are getting that axe on them. Method U here getting Kula the Butcher down to 50%, while Abrakeydabra has it down to 90 right here.
Yeah, we saw one Severing Axe on Sally, and one of them actually just getting dodged completely. So very good for Method U here. As soon as he can get rid of Severing Axes completely by either using an immunity or using a Dwarf Facial, anything like that to get rid of it, then it's just so good for his team. We've seen Aqu'sirr actually got 3 of them the last time around they were playing this dungeon. He did manage to heal away 3 in a row, so very good on him, but hopefully this time around they have a little bit more luck.
Yep, we actually did see one of the axes go onto Genji there. He ends up stone forming it off, and we actually have seen the axe go on Azalea. Obviously, that's the most dangerous, honestly, just it going on Azalea, but as soon as they do kill Kula, he's actually able to Shadow Meld it off if he does actually get it at the right time, because you'll end up dropping combat with the boss. Azalea actually just ending up healing through it here, though.
Maybe he does have Shadow Meld ready at this point because they were Shadow Melting off the aggro from the trash pack. So this Shadow Meld does have a 3-minute cooldown, so that's probably why he didn't Shadow Meld here. But yeah, this one interesting interaction on this boss is that in between 2 bosses, you can actually get out of combat by either Shadow Melting or vanishing. And this is happening for all of them, not only because you can get rid of debuffs, but you can also use another potion, which just increases your damage done. So this is why we see the rogues and everyone else just kind of Shadow Melting, using another potion as soon as one of the bosses goes down.
Yep, and you actually do see on the side of Method U, they're dealing with this totem phase on Zanzal, making sure that they do kill that explosive totem very quickly, and then moving on to the Earth Wall totem, because the Earth Wall totem ends up putting a shield on the tank. Now they're slowly moving the boss over to this Torrent totem, which is casting all this ground effect, forcing everybody to get out of melee. We actually do see from the side of Method in A yesterday, they actually end up letting the lightning totem ending up just sit out there and casting the whole entire time. It doesn't end up having to go down. It can lock out your healer if your healer is casting whenever it does go off, so it can be kind of scary if your healer does get locked, but overall it's not the worst possible thing, as we do see Abrakeydabra getting that totem phase as well.
Yeah, usually there's not a lot of damage at all coming in from Sanacel and from Akali at the end. The only real damage is coming from the barrel through and the Grievous that they have to heal up afterwards. So probably when Akali comes out, they probably want to deal with this totem, making sure that Zalia or Aqu'sirr are not getting interrupted on those casts. But other than that, on a full melee setup, you don't have any casts, right? You can't really get interrupted by anything really. So that's why they're just kind of sitting there, increasing their damage on the boss. As Method U already on the last boss here on Akali, while Abrakeydabra is still on 36%.
Yeah, Abrakeydabra just falling more and more behind here as Method EU has engaged Akali. Of course, he does cast that barrel through cast, which needs to be soaked by the group. It can also be vanished off. I think it can also be parried by these rogues as well. So just some things that you can actually do. If Miraz were to get it, he can also jump off the edge, and if he does pop his Transcend while that barrel through is being casted, you can actually just cancel it in general. But that's just some of the ways that Method EU can actually end up dealing with this barrel through, but the most consistent one, just group soaking it.
Yeah, the group soak. Now, the only difficult part about this whole barrel through is that you do have Grievous, so it's a little bit annoying on the healer because he needs to heal the whole group up to 100%. He can't just, just go back to cat form, do damage, and let them get healed by the fluorescence, because then the Grievous will stack up. And this will just reduce the damage of the healer by quite a bit. But you can still see Zali just doing 10k DPS. Aqu'sirr also doing a lot of damage on his side. So even with the Grievous that they have to heal on the whole group, they're just both doing a lot of damage here.
Yep, you actually did see Divine blocking or dodging that debilitating backhand from Aqu'sirr, not getting that armor reduction debuff, which allows Aqu'sirr to just sit in cat form and DPS a little bit more, as now actually did get that debuff from that debilitating backhand. Mythic EU has downed the council fight, and they're going to be shrouding all the way back through here on their way to Shadow of Zul.
Yeah, so Shadow of Zul on a tyrannical setting, not the most dangerous mob, but we do have Grievous, and Grievous actually makes the boss a little bit more difficult, because Grievous actually gets applied to the rest of the members with those AoE zones that are happening. Now, usually it's not doing enough damage to the group for the healer to put attention to them. Usually they can just passively get healed up, but because of Grievous, the healer actually just kind of needs to heal them up before the Grievous stacks up, on top of having to spam the tank, because the tank is getting so much damage from this magic damage from the boss. As you can see him dropping low, and you can see the HPS of Sally just going up and up and up as he just stands there casting constantly regrowths on top of the tank here.
Yeah, you actually do see now's HPS being pretty high as well. Something to also note is how much mana you end up spending on Shadow of Zul, as of course Aqu'sirr ends up putting Grievous on all of your party members whenever he does end up doing that leap. So that's something that you'll end up spending a lot of mana on Aqu'sirr, and we of course know that most teams end up wanting to pull their 100% reaping into Aqu'sirr, so it doesn't really allow for your teammate to, for your healer to be able to get a drink for prolonged periods of time. So making sure that Xayah is also conserving his mana while babysitting now is very important. So making sure that the rest of his group does get topped up and he doesn't end up having to use too many regrowth casts in order to be able to get the group out of Grievous is very important here, as Mythic EU has down the Shadow of Zul.
Yeah, so this dot from Shadow of Zul actually persists on the tank, so Sally wants to make sure that he still heals now, even though they're done with the mini-boss. Now they did manage to get the Shadow Melt off to skip most of the reaping, or all of the reaping rather, and Sally also got a little bit of a drink off there. He should be fine on mana as they engage the boss fight. Abrakeydabra just really falling further and further behind, so at this point, if Mythic EU doesn't make any mistakes, we've seen the single target damage that Mythic EU can do. It's really good, so at this point, it really has to be a mistake from Mythic EU for Abrakeydabra to still have a chance, because they're still working on Shadow of Zul.
Yeah, you just need to be making sure that Xayah does end up having mana towards the very end of the fight. Now is actually going to be taking a pretty significant amount of damage from these blade combos, and making sure that nobody ends up taking unnecessary damage from the tornadoes, or ends up getting feared into one of the tornadoes, or gets feared into the hunting leap from Raban is actually very important. Abrakeydabra here downing the Shadow of Zul, as the whole entire group is incredibly low there.
Yeah, Aqu'sirr is just struggling to heal the Grievous back up here. They do need to Shadow Melt. They probably have to sit down and eat as well, as you can see here, just to get rid of the Grievous. Now, Abrakeydabra just now pulling the boss, as Mythic EU is already in 68%, about to spawn Zala. Now, on this boss, if you want to be as efficient as possible, you just kind of want to ignore Raban as much as possible, because Raban only jumps around, does the hunting leap. Other than that, he doesn't really do anything. So if you want to be risky, if you want to be playing risky and efficient, you just kind of ignore it. You wait until Zala spawns, you use your Bloodlust, and you just kind of AoE cleave everything down, while still trying to focus the boss as much as possible just to down him faster.
Yeah, you actually do see the Bloodlust coming in a little bit late for Mythic EU, as they did not have it up from using it on that trash, and you do see the Deathly Roar coming in. Of course, now can end up Berserker Raging, and you can end up mitigating that fear with just one of the Berserker Rages, but that's only one fear. This Deathly Roar might end up coming through, as Mythic EU does actually end up making really quick work of Tazala using those subtlety, not the subtlety rogues, the Outlaw rogues, with their 2-target cleave from Blade Flurry on Raban and Tazala and Aqu'sirr, in order to be able to quickly make work of Tazala there, as Abrakeydabra is down to 70% on Aqu'sirr, while Mythic EU is at 40%.
Yeah, the Bloodlust is so efficient here by Mythic EU, as they downed them so fast. Now at this point, it's only going to be the boss between them and winning this series against Abrakeydabra, as they have 0 deaths throughout this King's Quest here. Just very clean run by Mythic EU. Abrakeydabra, to be honest, also very clean. They only had 1 death that basically had the same strategy. It's just Abrakeydabra is a little bit slower, just less efficient, killing everything just slightly slower compared to Method EU, really. Method EU just such a clean run, such a good timing too. If you look at the final time here, 20% left on a boss at this point, not that many things that can wipe them anymore, as long as you make sure you dodge those tornadoes and you dodge the leap as well.
Yep, Xaylia sitting at about 15 to 20-ish% mana. So those Quaking Leaps end up putting Grievous on your whole entire party. We've actually seen Xaylia be doing a really good job of getting the whole entire group out of Grievous very quickly, but he has also been sitting in cat form for a large majority of the fight, doing about 12k DPS here. So making sure that he's not just a little bit too greedy with how early he's pre-hotting, and making sure that people aren't sitting in Grievous, forcing him to spend all of his mana very early is important. But Dazar dropping incredibly low here, and whenever Dazar does go down, that will be the match for Method EU in a very close series between them and Abrakeydabra.
Absolutely dominant performance there in King's Rest. While the series was pretty close, while Abrakeydabra does look much improved, it's very hard to be able to take a series from Method EU, though many have tried here, Sours.
That's right. Many have tried and none have succeeded yet. It's still possible. So we've got an interesting kind of thing on our hands where if Abrakeydabra goes into the lower bracket and then they beat Method NA or 40k, whichever one comes out of the lower bracket semifinals, and then beats Method EU somehow in grand finals, there'll be a tie for second place points. So that could be an interesting outcome if Abrakeydabra can manage to claim the first win ever over Method EU. But it was really well played by both teams here, except for this little bit of a hiccup, I guess, by Abrakeydabra. They opted to use their Bloodlust on the boss as opposed to on this trash pack, and I don't think it worked out very well for them, obviously. Divine Field had so many stacks of Grievous in the bleed, and then it just didn't go very well. And then I just wanted to highlight this little thing here where we see Xaylia doing well to move the knockback into the gate so that he doesn't get flung off the bridge, as we've seen happen to people in the past, as well as I'm sure in Dungeons Unlive as well.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing is if you ever look at the healing meters, which I love to have, you're able to see that Xaylia really didn't have to do that much healing on the last boss in particular. He actually was out-healed by Aqu'sirr on the last boss, and they still had another 25-30%. So he's spending all that extra time DPSing, right? And that's one thing that we've seen a number of different times where if you're just able to mitigate some of your damage a little bit better, avoid some of the tornadoes going on, they probably have the same thing on the third boss as well. Those things really add up, and as we saw, just a small little advantage for Method EU just continue to snowball throughout this one, Nagura. It just seemed like a lot of times it was that little bit of extra that they were able to pull out there. Yeah, we keep talking about this. Every small thing really matters. So if you avoid all the damage as a DPS in Method EU's group, you just enable Xaylia to do more damage, and the more damage Xaylia can do, the faster the mobs die, obviously. So just making sure you avoid all the avoidable damage, you don't get hit by those tornadoes, because on a Grievous Affix especially, this every time you get damage, the healer needs to go out of cat form, needs to make sure he heals you up immediately to not stack the Grievous up. So just all those like small things and the clean runs by them, just the movement, how they're running around as a group, and the synergy, just so efficient, and that's what matters, and that's what makes them so good.
Yeah, it's definitely that Grievous, management like she was talking about. Additionally to that, how Abrakeydabra versus Method EU ended up dealing with that bridge, and how quickly Method EU ended up dealing with that bridge was actually very important. Like Sours highlighted, we did have that death on Swagfist, but I don't even think that was like the crux of it. How they ended up dealing with the Raptors with their Bloodlust pull was actually kind of pivotal, because they were actually able to deal with a lot more trash with that Brute, allowing them to just make a quicker work of that bridge, pulling them further ahead of Abrakeydabra. Yeah, and with that victory, they will move on to the grand finals here, while Abrakeydabra is going to be waiting for the winner between our next matchup, Method NA and 40k here. So Abrakeydabra sitting pretty at this point. They got to be really happy that they're going to be at least third place, might even get another opportunity to match up against Method EU, because as we saw last week, Sours, that was exactly what we were seeing out of Method NA. They went into that upper bracket, they got really close to be able to bring Method EU down, and then lower finals, then once again they got a rematch in the grand.
Yeah, I think this is also a match where it's very possible that Method NA drops the first game. We're going straight into the Underrot again, and the Underrot has kind of been the bane of Method NA's existence this entire tournament. So whether or not Method NA can kind of clean up their Underrot performance, then maybe they'll be able to win. Second map is Motherload, and there's not a lot you can really do to clean up your performance in Sanguine Motherload. So first map advantage, whoever wins the first one, I think is going to have a huge mental advantage over the other team going into Sanguine Motherload, knowing that you have that safety strategy to fall back on in case Peacekeepers decide to take a nice bath.
Oh, I'm sure that they will. And then the game 3 is going to be on King's Rest as well. So Method NA and 40K, while they've had a number of matchups together, it does seem like 40K is definitely rising to that level. So we'll have to be watching them very closely. And if you'd like to place your vote on who you think will be taking it, be sure to use hashtag MNA or hashtag 4K in chat to place your vote going into this, as Method EU does move on once again into the grand finals for the third time, not dropping a series here